So we have a small address for you. It's our response to the United Nations indiscretion in demanding Nnamdi Kanu's unconditional release. The coalition of northern groups representing the vast equation of rights and civil organizations in northern Nigeria notes with utter perplexity the unwarranted interference of the United Nations with Nigeria's internal legal processes and legitimate application of established criminal justice procedures by its recent demand for the unconditional release of Nnamdi Kanu, leader of a duly proscribed terror group, from the lawful custody of a sovereign Nigerian nation. CNG notes also the United Nations explicit show of preference to some sections of the Nigerian society with greater bias whenever matters arising from or affecting the northern part of the country are placed before it. By this demand for the release of a felon on trial in an independent sovereign nation, the United Nations, otherwise a respectable global arbiter, tends to portray itself as supporting a renegade group responsible for inciting and carrying out violent armed insurrection against the Nigerian state and instigating unprovoked evictions, attacks, and killings of other Nigerians and destruction of their assets with the aim of causing a breakdown of law and order in Nigeria. We also note the indiscretion, levity, and condescension with which the United Nations attends to issues particularly raised from northern Nigeria in preference for those that openly and perpetually call for war and genocide and make desperate attempts to create religious and ethnic discord through inflammatory and inciting propaganda that pitches the different Nigerian ethnic nationalities against each other. A recap. It is important to recall here that at the peak of Nnamdi Kanu and IPOB's perpetual incitement for war and genocide, often targeted at people of other sections of the country, using all sorts of guises, including ethnicity and religion, the CNG on 12th July 2017 petitioned the United Nations Secretary General on the unfolding developments in Nigeria. In that petition, which was also addressed to all major diplomatic missions represented in Nigeria, the CNG drew the attention of the United Nations to the emerging trends in the country that were pregnant with complications and unforeseen consequences. We were concerned that the Igbo have incessantly made public that unless they have an independent Biafra, they will wage a war against Nigeria and Nigerians. Taking cognizance of these emerging realities, CNG took the well-reasoned decision to address a communication to the United Nations seeking for its facilitation in ensuring a smooth and seamless determination of this lingering issue. Curiously, however, the United Nations never acted on that petition. We also recall that the United Nations meted the same disdainful treatment to our second letter to the Secretary General on September 30th, 2017. In that petition, we called on the international community to proscribe IPOB and consider its activities as acts of terrorism in accordance with relevant international treaties and conventions which are in their custody. We based our request on the following grounds. One, that IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu's constant hate speech and call for his violent secessionist agenda to be supported by Igbo people living in the UK, the USA, and Canada. Number two, the call by Nnamdi Kanu upon his Igbo tribal members in the diaspora for arms in order to wage war against Nigeria. Three, calls by Nnamdi Kanu on his IPOB members to wage war and make Nigerian situation akin to that of Somalia. The incident that showed IPOB members stopping cars and buses on city streets in the Igbo-dominated southeast, searching for Hausa people, a generic name for northerners, to kill. 5. The silence of Igbo leaders to Nnamdi Kanu's violence, as well as the implied endorsement of his actions by some Igbo political leaders, including Ike Ikweremadu, who was then a serving senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Ben Nwabuze, and Alex Ikweme, who is a former vice president. Again, 3 years afterwards, the United Nations ignored another request from CNG for intervention against targeted violations of rights and dignity of Northerners instigated and coordinated by Kanu and IPOB as fallout of a protest tagged End SARS beginning in October 2020. The protesters' initial demand for government to disband the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, a unit of the Nigerian police force, was clear as it was legitimate. And on October 11th, 2020, the President of Nigeria heeded the demand and dissolved the SARS. Being that there are those with long-held agenda, the protest was hijacked and its original motive twisted, with a new face of the End SARS coming with a long list of demands, followed by a well-orchestrated media propaganda. This then escalated the situation, with the IPOB leadership again coming to the forefront to call for carnage, killing and violence on Nigerians and security personnel, equipment, offices, and detention facilities. In the wake of this shocking but unsurprising turn of events resulting from the hate campaigns waged by Kanu and IPOB, dozens of policemen were officially confirmed gruesomely murdered, and dozens of police stations razed, inmates let loose from prisons, and about 60 northerners targeted and killed in many parts of southern Nigeria. In places like Lagos, people and businesses became targets of killing, violation, and their properties burnt or looted by IPOB fighters, including the revered palace of the Oba. It therefore becomes even more curious that the same United Nations that ignored our 3 previous communications backed by solid, incontrovertible facts should today want to stand against the prosecution of the leader of a group duly proscribed by an independent nation in absolute compliance with all relevant treaties and conventions qualifying actions as terrorism. Our observations. The CNG regrettably observes that while Nigeria remains committed to peace and global order, the international community, in this case the United Nations, opt to lend their voices in favor of the very IPOB leader, Nnamdi Kanu, who again and again called for war and genocide, using propaganda, hate campaign, and directives to instigate his followers to target and kill fellow citizens and security personnel, loot their properties, and violate the dignity of the Nigerian state. We also observe that, 1. While IPOB was legitimately proscribed by the Nigerian authorities as a terrorist organization, its leaders tend to find cover in the deliberate action or inaction of international agencies and some Western countries, under which they commit all sorts of crimes against Nigeria, crimes that no Western nation will allow against its own people. Number 2, in dealing with security situations that affect Nigeria and Nigerians, very little attention and appreciation is given by the United Nations and some of our international friends to what Nigeria and law-abiding Nigerians are doing in the interest of national sovereignty, national security, national peace, and constitutionalism. The United Nations in particular, and some of our international friends and partners, have often been swift to condemning but slow in engaging Nigeria to build peace and harmony. Our stand. Consequent upon the foregone observations, the CNG hereby resolves to 1. Categorically state that it is unacceptable to Nigeria and Nigerians, and in particular to the North, that the United Nations will endorse the platform and space to be used by Kanu and IPOB in promoting anarchy and campaigning for genocide in Nigeria. 2. Demand the United Nations to immediately withdraw the call for the unconditional release of Nnamdi Kanu from the lawful custody of the Nigerian authorities. 3. Demand the United Nations to direct all member nations where Kanu, IPOB, and other authors of mindless violence and separatism find comfortable cover to perpetuate an agenda that fans the embers of discord, call for war and violence in Nigeria, to take action in line with their domestic laws on hate speech and international laws on war and genocide instead of accommodating them. 4. To call the attention of the United Nations and our friends in the international community to understand that bilateral friendships are guided by the principles of sovereignty, promotion of peace, and the standards that guide legitimate interference. 5. To caution the United Nations that their intervention, exclamations, and actions should never be drawn to discountenance the effort of the Nigerian state to protect citizens from violence and to impose law and order. 6. To call on the federal government of Nigeria to maintain the sanctity, dignity, and integrity of Nigeria and uphold and defend its sovereignty by resisting and rejecting such demands from any quarter. Conclusion. Lastly, it is important to caution the United Nations to weigh the impact and consequences of backing these perpetrators of indiscriminate violence, wanton discretion, wanton destruction, and collective mayhem, that fervently hope it will engulf the entire country and bring about another civil war and mass killings and suffering of innocent people. By far, a destabilized Nigeria will certainly threaten the peace and security of the entire sub-Saharan Africa. As the most populous country on the continent and one that continues to influence peace and stability across the subcontinent, any breakdown of law and order will only compound the security and humanitarian situations in the region. This will further worsen the continent's current situation, disrupt international cohesion, compound the despondent cases of human trafficking, migration, and other challenges the continent and the world are now facing. As a group that represents the legitimate interests of northern Nigeria, the CNG therefore calls on the United Nations and Nigeria's international friends to join in the effort of interrogating these unwarranted cases of Kanu and IPOB transmitting messages of hate and propaganda that have so far caused the destruction of many lives and property, further polarized Nigerians across ethnic, religious, and regional lines, sowing deeply a discord that will take ages to undo. Let it also be clear that just like every democracy around the world, Nigeria will not allow its citizens to be threatened by either internal or external aggression. These are clear provisions in Nigeria as they are under international law. Both the 1966 ICCPR and other international conventions are clear on the legality of restricting violent assembly and on enforcing the law to protect the right of others, to ensure national security, and to guarantee public safety and public order. We therefore caution that What our friends in the West will not condone upon their country and citizens, they should not condone the same to be perpetrated against other people and countries. Thank you very much.